It was early morning on the Navy base, and most of the personnel were still rubbing their eyes, getting ready for the day. The base had a rhythm of its own, the sound of boots echoing down the halls, the hum of machines, and the occasional clatter of a dropped tool. But in the middle of all this, there was one person who moved quietly, almost like she was invisible. Her name was Maria, a single mother who worked as a janitor. Unlike the other staff, she didn't wear a uniform or carry weapons. She carried a mop, a bucket, and a quiet sense of purpose. To many, she was just the janitor, someone they barely noticed. Maria's mornings always started the same way. She arrived before sunrise, careful not to wake the neighboring barracks. She parked her old, slightly rusty car in the far corner of the lot, grabbed her cleaning supplies, and walked with steady steps toward the main building. There was no rush in her movements. Everything she did seemed deliberate, almost thoughtful. The floors needed sweeping, the hallways needed polishing, and she approached each task with a seriousness that made it clear she took pride in her work. She was small in stature, with short hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Her hands were rough from years of hard work, and her clothes were practical, not flashy. There was nothing in her appearance to suggest she was anything more than a regular janitor. But there was something about her eyes, sharp, alert, and aware of everything around her. It was as if she could see more than just the surface of things. Even in the quiet moments, when she was mopping an empty hallway, her gaze scanned the surroundings like she was expecting something, or perhaps preparing for something. Her life outside the base was just as disciplined, though less noticed. Being a single mother wasn't easy. Her young son, Alex, was her world. Every morning she made sure he had breakfast, packed his lunch, and kissed him goodbye before starting her long day at work. She had learned to balance responsibility with patience, understanding that life demanded more from her than from most. The Navy base was just part of her day, but it was a place she treated with respect. She never complained, never asked for special treatment, and she kept to herself, quietly performing her duties. Most people overlooked Maria because she didn't seek attention. The officers and soldiers were focused on drills, missions, and paperwork. They didn't see the precision in how she arranged supplies, the way she moved so efficiently that it almost seemed choreographed, or how she noticed tiny things out of place. For example, a dropped bolt in the hallway wouldn't be ignored. She would pick it up immediately, as if the safety of the base depended on it. It wasn't that she was trying to impress anyone. She just had a natural sense of order, a habit of excellence embedded in her from long ago. Some of the younger personnel occasionally whispered about her. "She's just a janitor," they'd say, but there were always a few who noticed something unusual. "Have you seen how fast she moves?" one soldier whispered. "She's almost like she knows what's coming next." But these observations were quickly dismissed as exaggeration. No one truly knew her past and no one asked. Maria preferred it that way. Her life had enough complexity outside the base, and she didn't feel the need to explain herself. What made Maria truly remarkable was how she carried herself with quiet confidence. She never raised her voice, never demanded attention, and never bragged about anything. She smiled politely at those who greeted her, but there was always a sense that she was calculating, thinking, and observing. If someone tried to tease her or ignore her, she didn't react emotionally. She simply continued doing her work, unbothered. That calm, steady presence made her almost unnoticeable, yet subtly commanding. On this particular morning, as she moved down the wide hallways with her mop and bucket, she seemed like any other janitor, sweeping, polishing, ensuring the floors shone. But there was a rhythm in her movements that suggested more than routine cleaning. Each step was purposeful, each action precise, and if anyone had looked closely, they might have noticed the sharpness in her posture. It was as if she was ready for anything, though no one could guess what anything might be. In the midst of the busy Navy base, Maria was a ghost of normalcy, quietly present yet almost invisible. People passed her by without a second thought, calling her just a janitor, while she moved through the hallways with silent confidence. Little did anyone know, beneath the ordinary exterior, there was a story waiting to be revealed. A story of skill, courage, and experience that no one on the base could have imagined. And as the morning light streamed through the tall windows of the base, Maria went about her work, completely unaware that today, something would happen that would make everyone, even the SEAL Admiral, stop and notice her in a way they never had before. The SEAL Admiral arrived at the base later that morning, and with him came an air of authority that seemed to fill every room he entered. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man, with eyes that missed nothing. His uniform was immaculate, every metal polished, every stripe in place, and he carried himself with a confidence that demanded attention. Everyone on the base knew of him, either by reputation or by the stories of past missions that had made him a legend among the ranks. But for all his accomplishments, he had a playful side. A side that liked to test people, tease them, and see how they reacted under pressure. When he stepped into the main hall, the usual buzz of activity seemed to pause for a moment. Soldiers straightened their posture, officers checked their papers, and even the cleaners glanced up briefly. The Admiral had that effect on people. A combination of respect and a little fear mixed with curiosity. He was known for being fair, but he also had a sharp sense of humor, which could either charm people or make them nervous. Today, he was in high spirits, ready to inspect the base and maybe have a little fun along the way. As he walked through the hallways, his eyes moved quickly, scanning everything in detail. He noticed the soldiers practicing drills, officers discussing plans, and technicians working on machinery. But among all the busy activity, one figure caught his eye. Not because she stood out, but because she moved differently from everyone else. She was small, quiet, and completely focused on her work, pushing her mop across the polished floor with precision and care. At first, he almost missed her, assuming she was just another janitor. But something about her presence made him pause. There was an unusual calm in the way she moved, a steady rhythm that seemed almost deliberate, almost calculated. The Admiral's curiosity was piqued. He was used to dealing with people who tried to impress him, who flaunted their skills or talked about their achievements. But this woman did neither. She didn't even look up as he approached, her attention fully on her work. That kind of focus intrigued him. He liked people who were confident without needing recognition, who could perform under any circumstance without showing off. Something told him she wasn't as ordinary as she seemed. He decided to engage with her, though in his usual teasing manner. "Hey!" he called out, his voice carrying easily across the hall. The janitor paused, her hands on the mop, and looked up at him calmly. She didn't smile or frown, didn't show fear or excitement, just steady, alert eyes meeting his. The Admiral raised an eyebrow, impressed by her composure. Most people would have reacted with surprise or nervousness when addressed by someone of his rank. Not her. "I'm curious," he said, leaning slightly on his polished walking stick. "What's your nickname around here?" He asked it jokingly, expecting a simple, maybe funny answer. He was used to people being embarrassed, shy, or trying to be clever. This was his little game. Testing reactions, gauging character, seeing who could handle a light challenge. The janitor blinked slowly, her expression unreadable. Then, with a calm voice, she replied, almost casually, giving him a nickname that was simple, unassuming, and yet somehow carried weight. The Admiral expected her to laugh or shrug, but instead, there was a quiet confidence in her tone. It made him pause for a moment, an unusual pause for a man used to commanding attention. She didn't seek approval, didn't try to impress him, and yet, in that brief exchange, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Genuine intrigue. As he continued walking, he observed her from a distance. She moved seamlessly from sweeping to polishing, her motions precise and efficient. There was no wasted energy, no unnecessary movement. Every action seemed intentional. To anyone else, she might have seemed like a diligent worker doing her routine tasks. But the Admiral noticed the small details. The way she adjusted her posture instantly when someone passed, how her hands seemed steady even when carrying heavy equipment, and the subtle awareness in her gaze that took in everything around her. He realized that she had skills that went beyond ordinary cleaning. There was a discipline in her movements, a rhythm in her work, and a quiet strength that suggested she had faced challenges and mastered them in ways that were invisible to the casual observer. She reminded him of the young recruits he trained, the ones who had potential but hid it under a calm exterior. And yet, there was something even more remarkable here. She wasn't a recruit. She was an adult, experienced, and carrying herself with a level of control and awareness that few could match. Throughout the morning, the Admiral found himself circling back to watch her. He saw the way she responded to small mishaps without panic, how she managed tasks under pressure, and how she maintained focus despite distractions. Every detail he noticed made him more curious. He was no stranger to reading people, and this woman was an enigma. She didn't try to impress him, didn't play any games, and yet, in the simplicity of her work, there was something extraordinary. By the time he moved on to other parts of the base, the Admiral couldn't shake the feeling that this janitor was more than she appeared. Most people at the base had roles, ranks, and responsibilities that were easy to categorize. But she defied categorization. Quiet, diligent, unassuming, yet undeniably skilled. She made him pause, and that rarely happened. For a man who had faced countless challenges and commanded elite teams, that was saying something. And so, the SEAL Admiral left the hallways with a new awareness. He didn't yet know why, but he felt that this seemingly ordinary janitor was someone to pay attention to. Someone whose story, skills, and presence would soon leave a lasting impression on him, and on everyone else at the base. The day was moving along at the Navy base, the sun streaming through the large windows and reflecting off the polished floors. Soldiers moved with purpose, officers walked briskly between offices, and technicians worked on their assigned tasks. Amidst all this, Maria, the single mother janitor, continued her routine, sweeping, polishing, and quietly keeping the base in perfect order. Her presence was calm, almost unnoticed except by one person, the SEAL Admiral. By now, the Admiral had been observing her for some time. He had seen the precision in her movements, the focus in her eyes, and the quiet confidence in her demeanor. He was curious, more than he liked to admit, and he enjoyed the feeling of unpredictability she brought into his usually controlled environment. For someone like him, who had spent decades leading elite teams and managing high-stress situations, noticing someone in this way was unusual. Most people either tried too hard to impress or didn't stand out at all. Maria was different. Quiet, capable, and somehow untouchable in her calmness. It was at this point that the Admiral decided to engage her, but in his typical playful, teasing manner. He had always enjoyed testing people, seeing how they reacted under pressure, or just having a little fun at someone's expense. He walked toward her with a smile that was both confident and slightly mischievous. "Hey there," he called out, his voice carrying across the hall. Maria paused for a brief moment, lifting her gaze to meet his. Her eyes, steady and unflinching, met his with calm curiosity. She didn't flinch or look nervous. She simply regarded him, waiting for him to speak further. The Admiral leaned slightly on his polished walking stick, giving the impression of casual authority, though everyone who knew him understood that there was nothing casual about his presence. "Tell me," he said, with a teasing edge in his voice, "what's your nickname around here?" It was a question meant as a joke, something to get a reaction, to see if she would laugh, blush, or give a witty reply. It was a simple challenge, but in his mind it was fun. Maria didn't smile or react immediately. She tilted her head slightly, assessing him in silence. Then, with a voice that was calm, steady, and deliberate, she gave her response. Her answer was simple, almost casual, yet it carried a subtle weight, a hidden confidence that the Admiral couldn't quite place. He had expected a nervous giggle, a shrug, or a playful retort, but nothing like this. She delivered her nickname with the calm assurance of someone who had faced far greater challenges than any joke from a visiting admiral. For a brief moment, the Admiral froze, not out of fear, but out of unexpected respect and curiosity. He had encountered many people in his long career. Recruits, officers, enlisted personnel, and even civilians. Most reactions were predictable, but this janitor was different. There was something in her composure, in the calm strength behind her eyes, that told him she was more than she appeared. His playful challenge had not elicited the reaction he anticipated. Instead, it revealed a hidden layer of character he hadn't expected. As he continued his casual walk around the hall, he found himself glancing back at her more than once. She moved with quiet precision, her motions efficient and controlled. Every action seemed deliberate, almost choreographed, yet effortless. She adjusted quickly when someone passed by, carried her mop and bucket with ease, and never seemed to lose focus. To the casual observer, she was just a janitor doing her job, but the Admiral could see the subtle skills hidden beneath her ordinary exterior. There was a discipline in her movements, a clarity in her focus, and a calm confidence that spoke of experience and resilience. The other personnel barely noticed the interaction, continuing their work and assuming the Admiral was merely making polite conversation. But he was paying attention, analyzing each detail. The way she held herself, the way she responded to his joke, and the quiet control she seemed to possess over her surroundings. He realized that her nickname, delivered with such calm confidence, hinted at a past that was far more interesting than anyone could guess. He didn't yet know the details, but something told him she had experiences, skills, and stories that were hidden beneath her ordinary appearance. Maria, for her part, didn't try to impress him or anyone else. She simply continued her work, moving from one task to another with steady precision. Her eyes occasionally flicked to the Admiral, but she didn't seek his attention or approval. She knew who she was, what she had accomplished, and what she was capable of. The nickname she shared was a small piece of her history, a clue that only those paying close attention might recognize. She had learned over the years that humility, discretion, and patience were powerful tools, especially in places where appearances could be deceiving. The Admiral, meanwhile, felt a growing sense of intrigue. He had gone into this interaction expecting a simple joke, a casual moment of humor. Instead, he encountered a woman whose calm confidence and quiet strength unsettled his expectations. He couldn't help but wonder about the story behind her nickname, about the experiences that had shaped her, and about the hidden skills she carried with her so effortlessly. For the first time in a long while, he was genuinely curious about someone who appeared ordinary on the surface but extraordinary in reality. And so, the small, seemingly harmless interaction, the playful question about her nickname, set the stage for something much bigger. The Admiral had no idea that this simple moment would soon escalate into a series of events that would reveal her extraordinary abilities. What had started as a joke was about to turn into a moment that would make him stop, think, and ultimately respect the janitor in a way that few others had. Maria's calm response, her hidden strength, and the quiet authority in her presence had left an impression that would soon grow into astonishment for everyone at the base, especially the SEAL Admiral himself. As the day went on at the Navy base, life moved at its usual pace. Soldiers ran drills, officers discussed missions, and the hum of machinery filled the air. Amid all this controlled chaos, Maria continued her work, sweeping floors, polishing hallways, and quietly keeping the base in perfect order. To most people, she was simply the janitor, someone present but easily overlooked. But for the SEAL Admiral, who had spent the morning observing her, things were beginning to feel different. Something about Maria was not what it seemed at first glance, and small details were starting to catch his attention. It began with small, almost unnoticeable moments. While sweeping a long corridor, Maria spotted a tiny bolt lying on the floor near a maintenance area. Most people would have ignored it, thinking it was someone else's responsibility. But she bent down and picked it up immediately, inspecting it carefully before setting it aside in a safe place. The gesture was quick, precise, and efficient, almost instinctive. The Admiral, watching from a distance, noticed it and raised an eyebrow. Most janitors wouldn't pay attention to such a small detail. The way she handled it suggested not only discipline but also experience beyond ordinary cleaning duties. Another subtle detail appeared when she moved near the storage rooms. Several containers were stacked slightly unevenly, and she adjusted them with careful hands, ensuring they were perfectly aligned. She did this so naturally, so effortlessly, that anyone else might have thought it was just habit. But the Admiral could see the precision behind it, the kind of exactness that comes from training, from performing under pressure, and from a mindset conditioned to notice and correct even the smallest mistakes. Every motion she made carried efficiency and control, as if she had done this hundreds, if not thousands, of times in situations far more critical than sweeping a hallway. Some junior personnel whispered among themselves about her. "Have you seen her today?" one asked quietly. "She moves like she's, I don't know, trained for something." Another soldier nodded, clearly impressed but unsure of what to say. Yet most people ignored these subtle cues. Maria didn't make a show of her skills. She didn't want attention or recognition. She simply moved through her day with quiet confidence, performing every task with a sense of precision that went unnoticed by those who weren't paying attention. The SEAL Admiral, however, was paying very close attention. He noticed how she never rushed, how she never panicked, and how she seemed to anticipate problems before they happened. When a trash can tipped slightly, she caught it before it fell over. When a piece of equipment made a loud clatter in a nearby room, she didn't startle, but she adjusted her movement to stay safe and continue her work without interruption. Her awareness of her surroundings was extraordinary, and it became increasingly clear to the Admiral that this was no ordinary janitor. He found himself analyzing every small gesture, every movement, and every detail of her day. It was as if he was watching a silent drill, a display of skill hidden in plain sight. While she mopped, she adjusted her stance, maintained balance perfectly, and moved with smooth, deliberate motions. Even when no one else was watching, she maintained the same level of discipline. The Admiral realized that the more he observed, the more evidence he saw of someone trained, someone who had been through challenges that required exacting precision, focus, and control. This realization sparked a mix of curiosity and admiration in him. He had met people who claimed skills or wore ranks to show their authority, but Maria didn't have a uniform, a rank, or medals. She had something more subtle yet far more powerful. A quiet competence that revealed itself in action rather than words. The Admiral, who had spent his career leading elite forces, could instantly recognize the traits of someone who was disciplined, capable, and trained to react under pressure. Maria displayed all of this, hidden beneath the guise of a simple janitor. Even as the day continued, the small hints of her hidden abilities didn't go unnoticed. When a maintenance door was stuck, she handled it effortlessly, using her strength and knowledge of leverage in a way that was both smooth and precise. When someone dropped a heavy box nearby, she moved instinctively to prevent it from falling further, adjusting her movements without hesitation. To the casual observer, these were small acts of care. To the Admiral, they were clues, evidence of a skill set and training that had clearly been honed over years, in situations far more demanding than anything the base required for a janitor. He began to wonder quietly about her past. Where had she learned such skills? Was she a former military operative? Had she worked in a high-stakes environment before taking this quiet job at the base? These questions raced through his mind as he continued to watch her. Each small hint, each precise motion, each calm reaction, built a picture of someone who was far more extraordinary than anyone suspected. Maria, for her part, remained completely unaware of the impact she was having. She didn't act with pride or arrogance. She didn't show off. She simply moved through her day with calm competence, focused on her work, and on maintaining order around her. The SEAL Admiral, however, could no longer ignore the evidence before his eyes. He realized that the nickname she had casually mentioned earlier, something he had thought was a joke, might carry a deeper meaning, a history of skill, courage, and perhaps even danger. By the end of the morning, the Admiral's perspective had shifted. What had started as playful curiosity had turned into serious respect. Maria was no ordinary janitor. She was someone who had hidden extraordinary abilities behind a simple, unassuming exterior. The base itself was safe under her watchful eyes, though no one else had noticed it yet. The Admiral understood that the quiet woman who moved through the halls with mop and bucket carried a presence and a history that commanded attention, even if she didn't ask for it. And as he walked away to continue his inspections, he couldn't help but feel that her story was only beginning to reveal itself. The morning at the Navy base had settled into its usual rhythm. Soldiers were running drills, officers were busy with reports, and mechanics worked on machinery, each focused on their responsibilities. Amid all this activity, Maria, the single mother janitor, moved quietly and efficiently, her mop gliding across the polished floors and her eyes scanning the surroundings as she worked. To most people, she was invisible, a simple janitor, someone to be noticed only when she was in the way. But the SEAL Admiral, who had already observed her earlier, could sense that there was something unusual about her. He had noticed her calm confidence, the precision in her movements, and the quiet control she seemed to have over her environment. It began with small details, moments that seemed ordinary but were anything but. As Maria swept the floors near the equipment storage area, she noticed a small bolt that had fallen to the ground. Without hesitation, she bent down, picked it up, and examined it carefully before putting it in a secure place. The act was quick, fluid, and precise. Most people wouldn't have thought twice about a stray bolt, but to the Admiral, her attention to detail was striking. He realized that this was not the behavior of someone who simply did janitorial work. It was the instinctive precision of someone trained to notice even the smallest inconsistencies in their environment. Her movements were equally remarkable when she adjusted a stack of boxes that had been slightly misaligned. With a few careful pushes, she straightened the stack so that it was perfectly balanced. She didn't rush or overthink it. Every motion was deliberate and efficient. The Admiral watched closely, his curiosity growing. The way she handled simple tasks with such attention and care hinted at experience far beyond that of a regular janitor. There was a rhythm in her work, a discipline in her posture, and a focus in her eyes that suggested a history of training and precision. Even the junior personnel noticed subtle differences in her behavior. "Have you seen how she works?" one young soldier whispered to another. "She moves like she's, I don't know, been trained for something serious." Most dismissed it as exaggeration, but a few couldn't shake the feeling that Maria's efficiency was extraordinary. She never made a show of her abilities, never sought praise, and moved through her day with quiet diligence. The SEAL Admiral, however, could see clearly what others missed. Every motion, every glance, every adjustment was part of a pattern that spoke of discipline, skill, and awareness. The Admiral noticed how Maria seemed to anticipate problems before they happened. When a trash bin started to tip over in the hallway, she caught it almost instinctively, maintaining balance while keeping her work uninterrupted. When a maintenance door creaked loudly, she adjusted her path to avoid it without breaking her rhythm. Her awareness of her surroundings was extraordinary, and it became clear to the Admiral that she was not only careful but trained to respond to sudden challenges. Her calm and measured actions reflected someone accustomed to operating in high-pressure situations, someone who had learned to stay composed when chaos erupted. As he observed her more closely, the Admiral began to connect small patterns. The way she shifted her weight subtly while walking, the precise control in her hands, the calm focus in her eyes. Each detail built a picture of someone who had mastered self-discipline and situational awareness. He could tell that her movements weren't learned overnight. They were the product of experience, practice, and possibly even intense training in high-stakes environments. For a man who had commanded elite SEAL teams, these traits were impossible to ignore. Maria's quiet confidence became even more apparent when she handled heavier tasks. She lifted a box that had been dropped by accident and moved it with ease, placing it exactly where it needed to be without hesitation. She corrected a misaligned tool on a workbench with the same careful precision. Even mundane tasks carried an air of skill that went unnoticed by anyone not paying close attention. The Admiral found himself increasingly intrigued. He had expected a simple janitor, someone to glance at and dismiss. Instead, he had discovered a woman whose abilities were hidden beneath a calm, unassuming exterior. The more he watched, the more he realized that her nickname, which she had mentioned casually during their earlier brief exchange, might hint at a deeper story. There was no doubt in his mind that she had a past full of discipline, skill, and perhaps danger. Experiences that shaped her into someone who could act calmly under pressure and handle any situation with precise control. He began to imagine what kind of missions or responsibilities she might have had to develop such abilities. Yet Maria didn't seek recognition. She didn't boast about her past or flaunt her skill. She simply moved through the base, performing her work with focus and care. Her quiet competence was a stark contrast to the noisy activity around her, and it created a sense of understated authority. The Admiral, who was used to commanding attention and respect, found himself watching with a mix of admiration and curiosity. He recognized that she was someone extraordinary hiding in plain sight, a rare combination of humility and hidden power. By the end of the morning, the Admiral's perception had changed. He could no longer see Maria as just a janitor. The small details, the subtle skills, and the calm confidence she displayed all pointed to a hidden strength and capability that demanded respect. He realized that the nickname, the composure, and the precision were clues to a story far greater than he could yet understand. And though Maria continued quietly with her day, her presence had left a strong impression on him, an impression that would shape the events to come and reveal the full extent of her extraordinary abilities. By midday, the Navy base had grown busier. Soldiers shouted commands during drills, engines roared from the maintenance area, and officers hurried between rooms, checking schedules and reports. Amid the hustle, Maria continued her work, sweeping hallways, polishing floors, and keeping the base in perfect order. To most people, her presence was quiet, almost invisible. But the SEAL Admiral had been observing her for hours, and by now, his curiosity had turned into genuine intrigue. He had seen hints of her hidden abilities, small signs of precision and awareness, and he couldn't ignore the feeling that she was far more skilled than anyone realized. The tension began subtly, almost unnoticed. A loud clang echoed from one of the maintenance rooms. A heavy tool had fallen and hit the floor. Most people would have jumped back or rushed to see what had happened. But Maria didn't flinch. Her eyes flicked to the source of the sound. She adjusted her stance slightly, and she moved toward the room with calm, deliberate steps. Her actions were precise, measured, and controlled. She didn't panic. She didn't rush. Every movement was intentional. The Admiral, watching from across the hall, could see immediately that this was no ordinary janitor reacting instinctively. She had training, experience, and the kind of awareness that came only from facing real challenges before. As she entered the maintenance room, a small crowd had gathered, confused and uncertain about how to handle the situation. A piece of equipment had become stuck, and some of the junior personnel were hesitant to touch it, worried they might make things worse. Maria assessed the situation quickly. She didn't speak loudly or command attention, but her presence alone seemed to calm everyone nearby. With steady hands, she adjusted the equipment, moving with fluid motions that demonstrated strength and skill. In seconds, the situation was under control. What could have turned into chaos passed smoothly because of her. The Admiral's eyebrows rose as he watched. He had seen elite forces in action, trained to respond under pressure, and he recognized the same instinctive efficiency in Maria. She moved without hesitation, balancing speed and precision perfectly. Her calm demeanor made it almost look easy, but the Admiral knew from experience that handling such situations required focus, discipline, and an ability to stay composed when others were panicking. Every subtle adjustment she made, every step she took, revealed a level of skill that went far beyond cleaning floors. It wasn't just about reacting, it was about anticipating. Maria seemed to know where potential problems could arise, adjusting her movements before anything could escalate. A lever that might have fallen, a loose cable, or a nearby obstruction. She noticed all of it without taking her eyes off the task at hand. The people around her were frozen in awe. They had never seen anyone handle such a scenario with such calm precision. The Admiral, for the first time in the day, felt a twinge of disbelief. He realized that this janitor, this quiet, unassuming woman, had abilities he hadn't expected, and that were, frankly, extraordinary. Word began to spread among the nearby personnel. "Did you see that?" whispered one young soldier. "She just fixed that in seconds, and she didn't even break a sweat." Others nodded, still unsure if they should voice their astonishment. But the Admiral didn't need anyone to confirm it. He had seen enough. The nickname she had casually mentioned earlier, the calm confidence she displayed all day, and now her skill in handling a tense situation. All these pieces were coming together. She wasn't just capable. She was exceptional. What made the moment even more striking was her attitude. She didn't seek praise. She didn't explain herself or try to impress anyone. Once the equipment was safely adjusted, she simply returned to her work, sweeping and polishing as if nothing had happened. The Admiral was astounded. Most people, when faced with a high-pressure situation, either freeze, panic, or try to take credit afterward. Maria did none of these things. Her composure, focus, and silent competence made it clear that she had been trained to act, not to boast. This event set off a ripple of respect among those who witnessed it, though not all fully understood why. The juniors stared in disbelief, some shaking their heads at her efficiency, while others whispered theories about her past. The Admiral, however, began connecting the dots. Her movements, her calm under pressure, and her hidden confidence all pointed to a history that was far more impressive than anyone could imagine. He realized that the playful nickname he had asked for earlier wasn't just a casual moniker. It might hint at a life of discipline, training, and high-stakes experiences that she carried quietly beneath her ordinary exterior. Even as the incident settled and life at the base returned to its usual rhythm, the tension lingered. The Admiral couldn't shake the image of Maria handling the equipment with such calm authority. He knew he was witnessing something rare, a person whose skills and composure were not immediately obvious but were undeniable once revealed. And though Maria went back to her sweeping, moving with the same quiet efficiency she always had, everyone around her had begun to notice that there was something extraordinary about the woman they had always considered ordinary. By the end of the incident, the SEAL Admiral's perception had changed completely. He could no longer see her as just a janitor. She was someone with hidden depth, extraordinary skill, and calm confidence that could turn a tense situation into a moment of controlled precision. The small hints he had noticed throughout the morning, her precise movements, her awareness, her nickname, were now impossible to ignore. Maria had revealed herself, in action if not in words, as someone capable of far more than anyone at the base had imagined. And in that moment, the Admiral began to realize that the quiet, unassuming woman before him might be someone whose reputation and abilities could command respect from anyone, including him. The base had settled into a temporary calm after the morning's incident, but for the SEAL Admiral, a quiet tension lingered in the air. He couldn't stop thinking about the janitor, Maria. She had already proven herself through small, precise actions, and now, after the equipment mishap, it was becoming impossible to see her as an ordinary worker. There was something about the way she moved, the calm authority she exuded, and the nickname she had casually mentioned earlier, something that hinted at a hidden past. It was during a routine inspection that the full weight of her capabilities began to reveal itself. A minor alarm went off in the weapons storage room. Normally, such alarms triggered immediate responses from security personnel, many of whom panicked slightly when faced with sudden noises or flashing lights. But Maria's reaction was instantaneous and controlled. She paused her sweeping, her eyes scanning the room with incredible focus. There was no hesitation, no fear, just a quick, precise assessment. She moved toward the source of the alarm, her steps silent yet deliberate. As she approached, she noticed a problem that had gone unnoticed by everyone else. A small mechanical error that could have escalated into a serious issue if left unchecked. Without asking for help, without making a show of herself, Maria began to correct the problem. Her hands moved with incredible skill and confidence, adjusting mechanisms, securing equipment, and neutralizing the potential hazard. The entire operation took only moments, yet it was flawless. The SEAL Admiral, who had been following her from a distance, stopped in his tracks. His eyes widened as he observed her movements. Every motion was calculated, efficient, and executed with absolute control. This was not the behavior of someone who had merely learned to handle tools or follow instructions. This was someone trained in high-stakes operations, someone who had faced situations where mistakes could cost lives. The calm precision with which she worked was something he had only ever seen in elite operatives, and he realized, with a sudden jolt of recognition, that he had underestimated her. As she finished, a small group of junior personnel entered the room, curious about the alarm. They were astonished to see the problem already solved. One whispered, "How did she even know what to do?" Another simply shook their head, speechless. Maria didn't acknowledge them. She returned to her sweeping as if nothing extraordinary had just occurred. But the SEAL Admiral knew better. He could see clearly now that this was not an ordinary janitor. She carried herself with the confidence and skill of someone who had been through intense training and dangerous situations, someone whose abilities went far beyond anything they could imagine. It was then that someone accidentally mentioned her old nickname, Night Viper. The words hung in the air like a spark. The Admiral froze instantly. That nickname wasn't just a casual moniker, it was legendary. He had heard stories of Night Viper during briefings, stories of a highly skilled operative who had completed covert missions with unmatched precision and courage. Few had ever met her in person, and even fewer knew the full extent of her exploits. And now, standing in front of him, was the woman he had unknowingly been observing all morning. For a moment he couldn't move or speak. The reality of the situation sank in. The quiet janitor he had thought was ordinary, the woman he had lightly joked with earlier, was someone whose reputation could make even elite personnel pause. The calm way she handled the alarm, her precise movements, and now the revelation of her true identity all combined to create a moment of sheer astonishment. He realized he had underestimated her completely, and the sense of respect that followed was immediate and profound. Maria, on the other hand, continued as if nothing had happened. She had no desire to impress anyone or reveal her past. To her, solving the problem was simply a matter of doing what needed to be done, as she always had. She was used to operating under the radar, completing tasks without fanfare, and maintaining the illusion of ordinariness. But the SEAL Admiral now understood that this calm exterior masked a lifetime of extraordinary skill, discipline, and courage. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly as the other personnel began to sense the tension. Even without knowing the details of her past, they could feel the presence of someone exceptional. The Admiral's reaction alone was enough to signal that Maria was extraordinary. Whispers started circulating, a mix of awe and curiosity. People who had previously dismissed her as just the janitor now looked at her with new eyes. Her nickname, once obscure, now carried weight and significance. For the Admiral, this was a turning point. He had spent decades leading teams, making critical decisions, and encountering highly trained personnel. Yet here was someone whose abilities, composure, and strategic mind he had completely underestimated. The realization forced him to reconsider every interaction he had with her so far. The casual joke he had made about her nickname earlier now felt almost inappropriate, given the extraordinary context behind it. By the end of the incident, the SEAL Admiral had gained a deep respect for Maria. He understood that she was not just a skilled individual but a living example of how true capability could be hidden beneath a quiet exterior. The calm, unassuming janitor was, in fact, a legend in her own right, a person whose past and skill set were now beginning to reveal themselves in subtle but undeniable ways. And though Maria returned to her work quietly, sweeping and polishing the floors, the room had changed. Everyone there, especially the Admiral, now saw her as someone extraordinary, someone whose abilities could not be measured by appearances alone. After the shocking revelation of her identity, the atmosphere at the Navy base shifted dramatically. Maria, the quiet janitor who had spent years moving through the halls unnoticed, had just shown everyone, especially the SEAL Admiral, that she was far more than she appeared. Her calm precision, unmatched skill, and legendary nickname, Night Viper, had left a mark on everyone who witnessed her actions. Yet Maria continued her work with the same quiet efficiency, sweeping floors, polishing hallways, and ensuring the base remained in perfect order. She did not seek admiration or recognition. To her, doing the right thing had always been enough. The SEAL Admiral, however, could no longer see her as an ordinary janitor. He had spent his entire career commanding elite teams, assessing talent, and responding to high-pressure situations. But Maria's abilities, revealed so subtly yet powerfully, had left him in awe. The way she had handled the alarm, the equipment, and even the small details that no one else noticed showed a combination of skill, discipline, and calm that few could match. For a man who had faced countless dangers, this was rare. He now understood that Maria's nickname, casually mentioned earlier, was no ordinary label. it was the mark of someone legendary. As he walked toward her quietly, the Admiral realized that respect alone was no longer sufficient. He needed to acknowledge her properly, in a way that showed he understood her worth. He approached without the playful smirk he had worn earlier, instead showing the serious, deep respect she had earned. "Maria," he said, using her real name for the first time in a formal tone. "I see now that I underestimated you. Your skills, your calm. It's extraordinary. You have my full respect." Maria glanced up briefly, offering a polite nod. She didn't flaunt her abilities, nor did she seek approval. She had been trained to act, to perform without hesitation, and to let results speak for themselves. But the Admiral's acknowledgement mattered. It was a rare moment of recognition from someone who had the authority, experience, and judgment to understand true excellence. For a moment, the playful dynamics of earlier in the day vanished, replaced by a deep, mutual respect. Word of Maria's abilities began to spread quietly throughout the base. Junior personnel, who had only recently begun to notice her efficiency, now looked at her with astonishment. Some whispered about the nickname Night Viper, a name that hinted at her legendary past, and the reactions ranged from awe to disbelief. Those who had previously dismissed her as just the janitor were now beginning to understand that she had hidden capabilities far beyond anything they could imagine. The base itself seemed to hold a collective curiosity, a mixture of admiration and cautious respect for the woman who had operated in plain sight for so long. The Admiral, aware of the whispers around him, decided to use the moment to set an example. He spoke to the personnel gathered nearby, his voice calm but commanding. "Do not be fooled by appearances," he said. "Excellence can be quiet. True skill does not always come with medals or rank." Today, Maria has shown us all what it means to act with precision, focus, and discipline. Respect her, learn from her, and remember that capability can often be hidden in the most unexpected places. Maria continued her tasks, her movements as fluid and calm as ever. She didn't pause for praise, nor did she change her behavior. This consistency only reinforced her extraordinary nature. The personnel watching her began to realize that her actions were not performative. They were genuine, the product of years of experience and rigorous training. The more they observed, the more they understood that Maria's greatness wasn't just in her skills, but in her humility and her ability to act without the need for recognition. For the SEAL Admiral, this realization was both humbling and enlightening. He had encountered many skilled individuals in his career, but few had carried themselves with such quiet authority. Maria's combination of skill, composure, and discretion was a reminder that true capability was often invisible until revealed in the right moment. He found himself reflecting on the assumptions he had made earlier in the day. His initial jokes, casual observations, and playful teasing seemed trivial compared to the respect she had earned through her actions. The dynamic between the Admiral and Maria subtly changed after this moment. Where once there had been light teasing and casual curiosity, there was now a deep acknowledgement of her abilities. He treated her differently, not as someone to joke with, but as an equal in skill and judgment. He recognized her as a professional, someone whose experience and discipline could be relied upon in any situation. And though Maria continued to perform her janitorial duties, the Admiral's respect was evident in the way he observed her, waited for her actions, and allowed her space to operate without interference. By the end of the day, the base personnel had begun to see a new reality. Appearances could be deceiving, and greatness often hides in plain sight. Maria, with her calm efficiency, quiet confidence, and legendary skills, had transformed the way people perceived her. The SEAL Admiral had learned a valuable lesson in humility and respect, while the junior personnel had witnessed the power of skill, discipline, and quiet competence. And through it all, Maria moved through her work as if nothing extraordinary had happened, leaving an impression that would last far longer than a single day. In that moment, it became clear. Maria's story was not just about her hidden abilities. It was about the respect she had earned, the lessons she had quietly imparted, and the awe she inspired in those who had finally recognized her true worth. The base had been forever changed by her presence, and the SEAL Admiral, who had begun the day with playful curiosity, now understood that some legends do not announce themselves. They quietly act, and the world only notices when it is too late to ignore their greatness. The day at the Navy base was drawing to a close, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the polished floors and quieting the once busy hallways. Soldiers were finishing drills, officers were wrapping up reports, and the hum of machinery was fading. Amid all this, Maria, the single mother janitor, continued her work as if nothing extraordinary had happened that morning. Her mop glided effortlessly across the floor, and her eyes scanned her surroundings with quiet alertness, ensuring every corner of the base was clean, safe, and in order. To anyone walking past, she appeared ordinary, diligent, and focused on her simple tasks. Yet, everyone who had witnessed her earlier knew the truth. She was anything but ordinary. The SEAL Admiral, who had spent the day observing her, now viewed her with profound respect. From his initial curiosity, through playful teasing, to the astonishing display of skill and calm under pressure, he had come to recognize Maria as a person of extraordinary ability. Her actions had revealed a hidden depth, a level of competence and calm that few could match. The nickname Night Viper no longer seemed like a casual moniker. It was a symbol of her past, a reminder of a life filled with discipline, danger, and remarkable skill. The Admiral understood that her true story was far richer and more extraordinary than anything he had encountered in his career. Despite the admiration she had earned, Maria remained completely unassuming. She did not seek recognition or applause. Even after saving the day during the equipment mishap and revealing hints of her legendary past, she continued to perform her janitorial duties with the same calm, methodical efficiency. Her movements were fluid, precise, and deliberate, a reflection of her discipline and training. She did not boast, nor did she explain herself. She simply acted, letting her abilities speak for themselves. Her humility added to the awe she inspired. Everyone realized that true greatness often does not demand attention but quietly asserts itself when needed. As the Admiral watched her one last time before leaving, he noticed the subtleties that made her exceptional. She adjusted the position of a fallen chair without looking, carried a heavy bucket of water without straining, and anticipated small obstacles before they became problems. Every movement was purposeful and precise, revealing a level of control over her environment that most could only dream of. To him, these small details were a testament to her character, a combination of strength, intelligence, and discipline that had been honed over years of demanding experience. The junior personnel who had witnessed her skills earlier continued to whisper among themselves. They were amazed at how someone so quiet and unassuming could command respect without saying a word. Some speculated about her past, connecting the nickname Night Viper to tales of elite operatives and covert missions. Though they did not know the full story, the impact of her actions was undeniable. The base itself seemed subtly changed. People walked a little more carefully, paid a little more attention to detail, and regarded Maria with a quiet reverence. What had once been routine tasks now seemed to carry weight, influenced by her presence and the lessons she had silently taught throughout the day. For the SEAL Admiral, the experience had been a lesson in humility and awareness. He realized that assumptions based on appearances could be dangerously misleading. Maria had looked like an ordinary janitor, someone to be casually observed or lightly teased. Yet her skills, discipline, and calm had revealed her to be someone extraordinary, capable of handling situations that would challenge even the most elite personnel. He reflected on his own experiences leading teams, recognizing that even the most seemingly ordinary individuals could possess hidden strength, wisdom, and courage. Maria's return to her work underscored the quiet power of competence. She continued moving through the halls with steady, confident steps, her mop sweeping clean lines across the polished floors. The Admiral watched her for a final moment, realizing that the true impact of her abilities lay not only in her skills but in her character. She had acted decisively, efficiently, and without ego. Her excellence had been revealed subtly, through action, not words. This quiet form of greatness had left a lasting impression, not just on him, but on everyone who had observed her that day. As the sun dipped lower, casting warm light across the base. Maria finished her tasks for the day. She carried her bucket to the storage room, replaced her mop, and adjusted the final pieces of equipment. Every movement remained precise and controlled, a reflection of her inner discipline. The Admiral took a final glance before departing, filled with respect and awe. He understood that her story was one of quiet heroism and remarkable capability. She had hidden a legendary past behind the humble guise of a janitor, and her actions that day had reminded everyone that appearances could be deceiving, and true greatness often hides in plain sight. By the time the base quieted for the evening, the impression Maria had left lingered. The officers, soldiers, and personnel who had witnessed her that day carried a newfound respect for the ordinary-looking woman who had revealed extraordinary skill. The Admiral, experienced and disciplined, had learned that leadership, talent, and courage could exist in the most unexpected forms. And as Maria quietly walked through the halls, finishing her work and preparing to return home to her son, she remained a living example of silent strength. Capable, disciplined, and legendary, yet humble and unseen by most. The day ended with a sense of quiet wonder. Maria returned to her simple life, doing her duties with precision, while everyone around her, especially the SEAL Admiral, had learned a profound lesson. True greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits quietly, hidden in plain sight, ready to be revealed when the moment demands it. And Maria, the single mother janitor known as Night Viper, had proven that the ordinary could hide the extraordinary, leaving a legacy of awe, respect, and inspiration that would endure long after the day was over.